Good morning, and thank you to all the CTAP members out here that'll be watching this. But we have two great guests today because what we're doing is an IBC review, and we have with us today Heidi Spees and John Foster from NOCTI, and they're going to go through and help us kind of answer some questions. As you all know, on August 18th, 2022, a new list for industry-based certifications came out and went to the superintendent through that administrator to be addressed list. And so that's when all of us saw this magical A through F accountability list for the first time. And if you can go to the administrator address, you can see that it has a ton of resources available on it. It has the actual address and also has some PowerPoint slides that kind of explains the process for putting those together. One of the major things that you guys need to know if you're watching this is that there's two lists. The one is the V2 list, the version 2, and then the version 3. The version 2 list is what we've been on for the past 2 years. And so when they're talking about which list is available for which graduates, this is going to be important to understand the difference between the V2 and the V3 list. And then of course the V3 list is a combination of the new industry-based certifications, and it has the sunsetting dates available for the certifications that are going off from the V2 list. So that's probably clear as mud, but I know that that information will help you when you go processing through the accountability standards. And for those of you, if you've seen the new list, you can see that NOCTI has got several certifications on the list, and we sure are excited to have them as a partner here with Texas CTE, and they're going to help us get our students some certifications. And do you guys, Mr. Foster, do you mind kind of kicking off there as and with introducing you and Heidi?
Sure. I'm Dr. John Foster. I'm President and CEO of NOCTI and NOCTI Business Solutions, and I've been in that position about 18 years or so, somewhere in that vicinity. And Heidi, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thanks, John. I'm Heidi Spees, and I manage our customer care and outreach division. We work with schools, regions, and states on credentialing programs, as well as our industry partners. And I've been with NOCTI for 23 years, so quite a while.
So we have a PowerPoint presentation, Mark, that we can run through. If now's the time to do that, we can swap screens and go ahead.
That sure sounds terrific, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate you guys helping us out like this.
Well,
I'm gonna try to.
We're really looking forward to working with Texas. We've been getting lots of calls and lots of emails, so you know, we're looking forward to it.
Well, when we were visiting about a week ago, we were talking about most CTE directors are familiar with NOCTI, but it was because a lot of their trades and industrial teachers used you guys to kind of complete their statement of qualifications because there wasn't necessarily and so it wasn't that y'all were an unfamiliar name. It's just that into the realm of student certifications.
Yeah, we do about, I think it's about 26 states, about half the country in terms of alternative teacher licensing. So individuals that transition, you know, from an industry experience or a trade experience that want to become teachers in about half the states typically go through us. And I know Texas is one that uses us. So yeah, we're happy to be here today, and we're excited to have more than, I think, 30 NOCTI credentials added to the IBC list. So looking forward to working with you guys, like we said, and we've already connected with several districts and IBCs, helping them try to get started with NOCTI. So
and Sarah Martin from Katy is on your board.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, Sarah Martin's a great woman. We've worked together for a number of years, and really pleased that she's you know, finally been nominated and approved by the consortium to serve on our board.
Fantastic. Well, I'm gonna quit yapping and you guys show us the great stuff.
Well, Mark, you gave us 4 questions a couple weeks ago or days ago, I forget now. So we're just going to walk through the answers to those questions, if that's okay. And so, the first question you posed to us was, what are the new industry-based certifications available through NOCTI? And Heidi's going to talk through most of these certifications. We're kind of like a, wrestling team, tag team. So we're going to, tag in and out. But we've had a number of these things approved. And we also know that a number of our partners have had assessments, approved too. But the first thing we wanted you to know about us is that we are a 501c3. We're a not-for-profit, and we're dedicated to the CTE community nationally. We believe in CTE, and we want to make sure that people understand the value of technical skills. And we want to make sure that students going through your programs in Texas can show how good they really are. That's the goal here. Secondly, we're a personnel accrediting body, and we'll maybe talk a little bit more about that later, but we meet the international standards of ISO 17024, which is something that very few certification providers, can claim. And lastly, we provide a lot of services and at a lot of different levels, like the teacher level we were just talking about. So we don't expect you to get it all in one sitting. Please feel free to come back and watch this video or reach out to us at nocti@nocti.org, or give us a phone call, and you can reach out that way. So Heidi, you want to take it away?
Sure. Thanks, John. So as John mentioned, we're excited to have so many NOCTI credentials added to the IBC list. It was such a great surprise to see the list come out with all of the new additions. And we've already been working with schools across Texas to create their NOCTI accounts and begin setting up their credentialing programs. So it's been nice to get to know the CTE programs in your state. So you'll notice on the slide that we've grouped the titles so that the viewers can easily identify the approved credentials across the various clusters. The corresponding IBC number should help with identification. And we want to point out that there are blueprints available at nocti.org for each title. And those blueprints provide the standards and competencies on which the test was built, along with percentage breakdown, information on administration, a performance test overview for titles that have a skill-based component, and a lot more information. The blueprints provide a really great opportunity to review the test framework and determine which title is the best fit for a program. As an example, under the Agriculture, Food, and Natural Resources cluster, you'll notice several titles. So crosswalking the standards and competencies from the blueprint to your program frameworks and content will serve as a guide in determining if, as an example, agriculture mechanics or production agriculture is the better fit. And you can see that several titles were added in the business, marketing, and finance cluster. And the example that I provided about crosswalking blueprints to program content is also a good suggestion for titles in the education and training cluster, as there are 2 levels of the early childhood education and care credential. So those blueprints are really going to be a great resource for selecting which credential is the best fit. And then moving on, you can see titles that are available for hospitality and tourism and information technology. And finally, titles that were added for manufacturing, STEM, and transportation, distribution, and logistics.
Yeah, so hopefully folks can go back and take a look at those. I know we clicked through them pretty quick, but there's lots of places you could find them. I did want to mention, in addition to those lists that are, our titles, we have a number of different other opportunities for you to take advantage of through our partners. You see a couple of them listed on the screen: HBI, ACF, MSSC, and FANUC. Our relationship with the American Culinary Federation is a bit unique in that ACF and NOCTI kind of co-branded the assessment for Certified Fundamentals Cook and for Certified Fundamentals Pastry Cook certifications. Our organizations work together on development of those assessments, and they offer students the opportunity to earn both a NOCTI and an ACF certification. So if that's something of interest to you, that's a pretty good deal. And with the other ones, I mean, FANUC, we offer FANUC Robotics Operator 1. Now, we do deliver a number of different FANUC certifications, but I think the Robot Operator 1 is the only one that got on the list. HBI, we offer something called the Pre-Apprenticeship Program. And under HBI, we have basic carpentry, electrical, masonry, building construction technology. We have their core, which is kind of it's a safety and basic power tool and hand tool kind of thing. And then we have the green core, which is some of the green technologies, you know, incorporated into the basics. And then also we have HVAC. And under MSSC, just to, again, make you a little bit aware, we do their certified logistics technician, which is their CLT program. We do their certified technician supply chain automation, which is CT-SCA. We like acronyms. And their certified production technician, which is their CPT program. So a lot of titles in addition to the ones that, you know, we had approved on the list.
So as John mentioned, that's quite a bit. With the more than 40 NOCTI and NOCTI partner titles added to the IBC list, it can be a lot to take in. We thought we'd share some category examples that you'll see when you start exploring our website to help explain the variety of credentials available. And really for the purposes of the IBC list, we're going to focus on the job ready, the pathway, the foundational, and then the partner categories. Just to give you a quick overview. So job ready assessments are very occupation specific with titles such as accounting, audio visual communications, and diesel technology. Those credentials measure specific occupational skills for students who complete a CTE program. And almost all of the job ready assessments include a hands-on performance component. The pathway assessments are broader in scope than the job ready credentials, and they measure technical skills within a pathway or cluster, but also incorporate soft skills and academic skills that are contextualized to the occupation. So a little bit different than job ready assessments. The foundational assessments measure an individual's understanding of kind of a core set of skills and key concepts within the career field or occupation. And then finally, John mentioned all of the partner network. And so just wanted to point out again that those blueprints for all of the titles that John mentioned are available on the website as well.
And I think we have, in the approved list, I think we have all of those categories approved, maybe except the employability, right, Heidi? I don't think there's a employability.
Right. Right. So we mentioned that almost all of the job ready assessments include a skill-based performance component. And so that's where students are completing hands-on jobs. Several of our partners also incorporate performance testing. And we want to point out that both the knowledge-based written test and a skill-based performance component are required when a credential has both of those components. So if a test has a written and a performance component, both are required for the credential for the IBC list. And then really just want to make sure that you know that we provide a variety of resources to support implementing both components. And real quickly, the knowledge-based component of the assessments measures obviously factual and theoretical knowledge about the occupation. Those tests consist of multiple choice questions, and some of them may include graphics, scenarios, or diagrams, and there are 4 answer choices for each question.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi. And I'll talk a little bit about the skill-based component, just because, you know, CT is really all about showing what you know. This component uses members of local industry advisory committees to serve as a third-party evaluator. This is a great way to engage local business and industry members in the operation of your school, and, you know, getting them to understand the competencies that your students know so that they understand how valuable your training really is. And so just like Heidi kind of ran through some of the knowledge-based components, let me just show you what a performance based or, you know, the skill portion might look like. This is that agriculture mechanics, one that we kind of discussed a teeny weeny bit when we first started. And you can see that on the slide, each one of the jobs within the performance category are kind of weighted and rated. which means that national subject matter experts have looked at this thing and said, look, we value horizontal square groove butt welds more than we do, I don't know, setting up an instrument and leveling on the farm. So you can see that we put 22% of the score on that horizontal groove, and we put only 11% on setting up a leveling instrument. So that's the way those kind of things work. All those skills are important, but they are weighted for importance. And if you look at the blueprint that Heidi mentioned a while ago, you can see sample jobs. This one happens to be that one about setting up the instrument. Students given 30 minutes to set up the level and take a rod reading on a road at a predetermined fixed location. So that's kind of the way the sample jobs work. And those jobs are evaluated with a standardized rubric that the subject matter experts will, evaluate your students on. So where do you go to learn about these details and select the best credential? As Heidi already mentioned, you just simply go to NOCTI.org, and there's a lot of great information there to help you learn about the credentials, including that blueprint index where you can select which blueprint for which credential you're considering. We don't have the time today to walk you through how to get to the blueprints, but it's pretty easy. If you can see that screen, basically if you look under the credential heading about 3 or 4 bumps down, it'll say blueprints. And if you click on that, there's a whole index, which I think we have a screenshot of it. Oh yeah, here's the one that talks about accounting basics. And it'll show you, like on the right-hand side of the screen there, it'll show you the standards and the weighting and rating. Now this is the written component. So you can see in this particular case that payroll preparation was pretty important. 17% of the written part of the test is on payroll preparation. And identification and application of source data is only 5%. So that's a lower level. So when you're planning for instruction, you want to make sure that you cover all these topics, of course, but you also want to make sure you know which ones are the most critical as far as national standards go. So as Heidi mentioned, these NOCTI credentialing assessments provide a good overview to competencies and skills, and everybody has access to these things on the list. There's sample questions on them. There's the number of questions involved, as well as the performance jobs. There's different areas covered and the weighting and rating. So we certainly recommend that teachers go through and review those blueprints to determine which ones best match their curriculum. And then once you've done that, then the credentialing assessment can, begin to be planned. So Heidi's going to talk to us about how these IBC are accessed by the district and the teacher and the students. So go ahead,
Thanks,
Heidi.
Jen. So this is kind of the question on everybody's mind. How do we access these IBCs? So we're going to talk about that. But before we dive in, I want to be sure and point out that our customer care team is a knowledgeable group, and they're really known for providing excellent customer care. They're really happy to assist with any questions. So we want you to feel free to call or email, and we're definitely available and ready to help out. So when we think about the key roles in a credentialing program, there are quite a few involved in a successful program. Obviously, administrators at the school designate the individual that's going to serve as the NOCTI site coordinator and provide overall support for the credentialing program. That site coordinator that's designated serves as the NOCTI's primary point of contact for the school. So that's the individual that we work with most closely. And that person oversees and coordinates all of the activities associated with testing. They can designate a co-coordinator to join in the fun and help assist with all of those activities related to the credentialing program. And then I won't even need to expand on this because we all know the importance of the instructors. I don't need to point out all of the positive ways in which instructors impact students and learning, but I do want to mention that we have a lot of resources for teachers, including a password protected teacher resource center to help support them in their role. And then we talked a little bit about evaluators earlier, but proctors and evaluators share a key role. Those are the individuals that are tasked with proctoring a written testing session and evaluating students as they complete the hands-on jobs of a performance test. We provide guidelines for selecting appropriate proctors and evaluators and have a lot of resource material for those individuals. We also provide a lot of live and recorded trainings and webinars for implementing and managing a credentialing program, along with a wealth of support materials. So, and again, just mentioning that our customer care team is available to help. So John has one of our systems up on the screen, and we have basically 3 primary systems that support a credentialing program. The first one that you see is the Client Services Center. That is the password protected site used by site coordinators and co-coordinators. It's really a one-stop shop for everything to do with managing the NOCTI credentialing program, from resources to ordering, to providing instructor access to the Teacher Resource Center, allocating tests to students, retrieving score reports and data and any certificates that are earned. There's a lot of information and things going on in that Client Services Center. So again, site coordinators and co-coordinators are encouraged to become familiar with that site and make use of all of the resources that are available. And then I mentioned the Teacher Resource Center. So that center is available for teachers, and they're granted access by the site coordinator. They're entered into the system through the Client Services Center that we just looked at. And so once teachers have access to this site, they're able to view each of the modules that you see on the screen, such as resources and reports and recognition. They can track student progress with testing. And then when students are linked to the teachers by the site coordinator, all of the reports and certificates for those students populate to the Teacher Resource Center. So this is a really great resource for teachers. And again, a lot of good information in the Teacher Resource Center that we encourage teachers to take advantage of. And then finally is our online testing system. Over 90% of NOCTI assessments are delivered through online testing, which isn't overly surprising to anyone, I'm sure. But this site is secure and user-friendly. It has built-in tools for things like enlarging graphics, accessing a calculator if needed, having the ability to mark a question to go back and view later, lots of features for test takers to support their testing session. And then for anyone, the landing and login pages provide the ability to test system verifications and to access computer setup information. You'll see on the screen, there's a Get Computer Ready for Testing button. And so that has a lot of great resources and allows you to try out the system to make sure everything's going to be functioning correctly. And you can try the testing system option as well to run through a sample test, which is a really great way to become familiar with the system features. And I just wanted to point out that in addition to standard laptops and desktops, online testing supports Chromebooks and most Android tablets and iPads manufactured after 2010. So really flexible for a lot of different devices. And then moving on, we want to talk about some allowable accommodations that are available for test takers with a formalized IEP or 504 plan. Some of those accommodations include text-to-speech, which is built into our online testing system. This allows participants to hear questions and answer choices. Also available are, you can see everything on the screen there, but wanted to point out time extensions. So if there's a requirement for extended time for administration, we can certainly accommodate that as well. And then if there are accommodations that are needed for English language learners, those should align with state requirements and guidelines. And really, it's the school's obligation to ensure that the learners receive the proper accommodations according to any state, local, or federal requirements. So now we'll move on to score reports and data. So once testing is completed, NOCTI provides an extensive score report package that includes the samples you can see on the screen, an individual report that provides scores for each standard, and pre-post comparison information when a pretest was administered. So this report is a really great tool to share with students. You also have a group report, which is provided for the entire group of test takers. And that report provides standards and competency results for each participant, as well as total scores, and is really great for assisting with analyzing kind of performance from the group level and identifying maybe potential program improvement areas, or just kind of getting a feel for where students might have done really well and where maybe they struggled a little bit. We have an analysis of scores report that's also provided for the testing group. So that has data on how scores compared to a group, state and national averages, and also provides the criterion reference cut score. And then the other report that there's a snippet that you can see is the competency report. So that report provides data and scores down to the competency level. If you remember on the blueprints, we provide standards and competencies on the blueprints. Questions are linked to competencies, and this report drills down to that level. There's also a competency summary extract that provides the ability to pull data based on a variety of filters. So those are some really great tools that John's going to expand on in just a minute. So we thought we'd briefly talk about how to interpret one of the reports, and we're going to use the individual score report. So you can see on the screen that this is an individual score report based on a written test. You can see that we provide obviously the total score as well as the score for each of the standard areas of the test. You can see that we're pointing out that percentage of change between a pre and post-test administration if a student was administered a pre-test. And we also provide that group, site, state, and national average information that I mentioned with the analysis of scores report. So this is a really great comprehensive score report for students that can be used in a lot of different ways. And John, I think you're going to take this one and come off mute.
Thanks, Heidi. Good overview of the reports, by the way. So, you know, under reports, you'll have access to the NOCTI data extract, which is a tool that allows the ability to export multiple score report data to a single Excel document. It's really as simple as selecting the criteria for the extract and just generating your report. The competency level summary report allows for the creation of summary level snapshots of competency data across all test activity by academic year. It can also do a sequence including multiple years. So the reason Heidi mentioned that I really wanted to talk about this report is because it has lots and lots of implications for professional development in terms of, you know, identifying, you know, strengths and weaknesses. Because what this really allows you to do is, like, let's say you've been with NOCTI for, I don't know, 3 years, which at this point none of you have, but if you had 3 years worth of data and you had data collected from 3 similar classes going through 3 programs, and you asked for this data summary report to cover those 3 years, you could get a pretty clear idea of the strengths and weaknesses of the instructional program because you've had 3 different cohorts go through the same program. So it enables you to find areas of strength and areas where students struggle with. I don't know if you can see that report very well, but if you were looking at this little draft in that's on the screen there, this 21st century skills, which is one of our workplace readiness tests, you could see that use of knowledge of computer logic operating systems and basic troubleshooting techniques was a weak area. And this could have been over a period of years. So this gives the educational professional, whether that's the teacher, the administrator, whoever, the opportunity to refocus on that particular competency and how the information's been delivered. You know, bottom line is, if you don't have objective data like this that's coming from a third party, then you can't make objective instructional modifications to help your students improve. The whole idea is, you know, continuous improvement. And by the way, we'd be happy to discuss, you know, engagement in professional activities that relates to data analysis. We have a data book that we wrote with ACTE, and we think that's a pretty good resource too. But that's a tool that you can use down the road. And, you know, as we go through this, we'll mention some other resources as well. So in addition to the in-person proctoring that is normal in schools, we also have remote proctoring for the knowledge-based assessments. And that's through an independent partner. And, you know, there is an additional fee for remote proctoring services. I think it's fairly minimal. It's about $25 per test taker. But remote proctoring can be directly ordered through our client service center during the time you order any desired assessments. And then also there's, again, lots of informative resources about remote proctoring in the resource section of the Client Service Center that Heidi just mentioned. That's an awful lot of C's. That's tough for us to say, but we did our best there. The remote proctoring option might be good for students who have like a long-term illness of some kind, or they're away for some period of time. Maybe they're in a work-based learning environment, but they've only been in it for, I don't know, a month or two, and you still want them to take the end of program kind of final exam. So lots of uses for remote proctoring.
So now that we've talked about testing and reporting, we're going to talk about preparation. So getting started and the resources that we provide to assist in preparing students for administration. We're going to talk about each of those that you see in a bit more detail, but I did just want to mention again, one of the main things that you want to make sure you're planning for is the accessibility options that I talked about just a bit earlier. It's important to identify those needs well in advance so that they can be in place in order to assure all test takers have an equitable testing situation and are provided any supports that might be required. So we've mentioned pre-testing a few times throughout the presentation, and pre-testing is a really great option for preparing for post-test administration and engaging students in their learning. A pre-test can be administered to determine a student's baseline technical knowledge, either at the beginning of a program or at a midpoint. And then that data is really useful for creating learning or remediation plans. It really allows teachers and students to work together to identify the strengths and maybe the areas needing improvement for a particular student. They can make some adjustments to an individual learning plan. It helps reduce test anxiety for students as they're allowed to actually go through a testing session, see what the questions look like, how the online testing system functions, and really work together to craft an individual test preparation plan. So it's an available option for all NOCTI written assessments, and we have complete pre-test policy information, guidelines, and resources in the Client Services Center that we would encourage you to take a look at. The next really great preparation tool are study guides. So study guides are really invaluable for preparing for a credentialing assessment. We have a digital format that makes them accessible from anywhere and with any device, so students can access these anywhere they're at, during school, outside of school, really from any device. And they're provided with access to an overview of the credential content, a breakdown of the performance test. There are study checklists, sample questions, a sample test, and a lot of additional resources in that digital study guide system to help them prepare for assessment. And then teachers have access to a teacher companion guide portal that they can use to track student use of the study guides, communicate back and forth, and assist students to make sure that they're using the study guides to their fullest. And so really that's a great tool for incorporating them into your program and helping students and teachers to work together to really build that confidence when they're preparing for testing.
And I just want to throw in here that, we know from research, any educational research, students really do better when they're in charge of their own learning and they help to, kind of craft their own learning plan. So by using these study guides, particularly with a teacher, they can kind of, again, find their strengths and weaknesses and focus on those and, determine a learning plan for, getting as many competencies accomplished as possible.
And then the other resource that we wanted to point out are instructor prep packs. So these are intended to be a teacher resource, and they provide all of the information needed to plan for test administration, particularly for the performance test. So that each prep pack includes an overview of all of the resources available for teachers, as well as a list of the equipment, materials, and supplies needed for testing. And for the performance test, that's broken out by job. So it's very comprehensive, walks you through how to set up the testing area for performance tests, and provides a lot of really great guidelines for administration. And those are available in the Teacher Resource Center and in the Client Services Center. And then John mentioned professional development. We do an awful lot of live and recorded webinars that I talked about. but we also do quite a bit of live and virtual customized professional development on a variety of different topics. We really build those sessions to be coordinated at the district, regional, or state level. And we really craft the topics to meet the needs of the participants. They're typically focused on using data, building a comprehensive credentialing program, or for new CTE teachers and administrators. John mentioned the data books that we authored with ACTE, and we also have books that are a great resource for new CTE teachers and administrators that are a really good resource when we're doing professional development on those topics. So let's talk about student recognition, which is really what we know as a motivational trigger for most learners, and kind of the exciting part of all of this. So we offer several credentialing opportunities. One of the most important is that students have the ability to earn NOCTI certification in the form of our workforce competency credential, and you can see a sample of that certificate on the screen. So the credential is issued to students that are scoring at or above the NOCTI Criterion's reference cut score, and students who take a written and a performance test will earn both credentials if they score at or above that cut score on the written and the performance test. So an opportunity to earn 2 credentials. Students are awarded certificates and digital badges, and so that allows them to share their success in paper and electronic formats. And then the other recognition piece that goes along with this, most NOCTI credentials also offer college credit recommendations. We work with the National College Credit Recommendation Service, NCCRS. They have experienced industry experts and professors that evaluate the rigor of NOCTI credentials to translate that content into college credit equivalencies. So there's a lot of information about this on our website at nocti.org. It's a really great way for students that meet or exceed the college credit benchmark to engage with a program they'd like to attend, to discuss credit options. Any kind of credit that students can get at a secondary or at a post-secondary level is great. We do want to point out that NCCRS has agreements with a lot of colleges and universities across the country who have indicated they will consider granting credit. And there's a list of those from our website. So you could certainly go and look at Texas to see which colleges and universities are on that list. It's a really great opportunity that's been in place for a while now, and has had a lot of really positive impact for the students that have taken advantage. We do, in addition to the report that NOCTI provides about college credit, if a program requires transcripted credit, we do have a partner that we can work with to actually provide students with transcripted credit. So it's a really great opportunity, like I mentioned.
Yeah, I think we looked before, and I think there's about 40 post-secondary institutions, 45 of them in Texas alone, that recognize the NCCRS credential. So I'm going to talk really briefly about digital badges. It was one of the ways that you can recognize a student's competencies that Heidi just mentioned 2 screens ago. But all of our credentials come with digital skill badges as well. They provide kind of a 3-dimensional picture of the individual. These badges allow the student to share with anybody that they choose to share with. The information really becomes student property. They pick it up in our skills badge locker, and it represents their skills. They can post them on social media sites. They can use them as part of a digital resume, or they can just be printed out just like, certificates and certifications can. So we just covered a lot of information about our credentialing system. So I want to take a minute just to quickly talk about a couple new topics and new products that were created. Some of them are direct resources for teachers, and others are things that you might be interested in kind of down the road. This first one is about our micro credentials. They're quite a bit different than our regular credentials in that they're just little teeny weeny pieces of things. When I talked about longitudinal reports and that competency summary reports, these little micros can be a real asset, because what we did was we took a look at our credentials from a national perspective, and we tried to pick which ones students nationally were having difficulty with. And then we tried to develop little teeny weeny video units that we posted on our learning management system that enable the student to go in and kind of refocus just on that one little piece of, competence. We call them targeted skills, but they're basically just little chunks of discrete piece of knowledge that are up on our learning management system, and they can be used synchronously or asynchronously, either with the teacher, without the teacher. You can use them on a whiteboard. You can talk about them through class, however you really want to, make the case. In any case, the thing that's important about them is that they're available 24/7, and the teacher basically controls the related assessment to the micro credential. And Mark mentioned Sarah Martin from Katy ISD a little while ago, and Heidi mentioned professional development. It wasn't that long ago that we did I think it was a 2-hour professional development with all the Katy new teachers for micro credentials and how to incorporate them into their programs. So we have done some professional development in Texas related to micro credentials. We have another good resource called our resume builder. And this is a collaboration with eHired, which is an affiliate of Indeed, which is that job finding app that a lot of folks use. Anyway, it focuses on building a custom resume for CTE learners. It includes things that are taken directly out of the NOCTI competency list that you'd find on our blueprints. So if a student wants to build a technical resume, they can just go in and they can click on this site, and they can dump those competencies directly into their resume as the way they're written in the blueprint. We also use our employability skills as part of the, kind of the soft skills part of the resume, and we tie directly to CTSOs, so that if somebody wants to put something in about Skills USA or FFA, they can do that directly. So we worked with eHired to make sure that this resume builder is directly focused on CTE students, because we know there's lots of resume builders out there. We know that you can get them for free, and basically in this case you kind of get what you pay for. We wanted to make sure that we had one focused directly on CTE students. And these are a couple new credentials. I know when we talked to Mark a while back, he mentioned that there's a lot of JROTC programs in the state, but if I remember correctly, most of them weren't identified as CTE programs. They were just delivered in CTE schools, right, Mark?
Yes, sir. They're in many of the schools in Texas, but they don't technically fall under CTE, and they don't technically receive CTE funding. And so it does come up in legislation. I'm sure it'll come up again this year, but it hasn't passed over into the CTE content yet.
Yeah, I know in a number of states we work in, there's a cluster that's called government, and under that government cluster, there's a couple little subdivisions. One of them's military. So a number of the states around have started to give military science credit for JROTC. So anyway, we have the contract with the 6 military branches to provide the end of program credential for JROTC. And of course, anybody in ag knows CASE probably, so I don't have to talk much about them. And America Makes is an affiliate of the Department of Defense, but they're all about additive manufacturing. And so we have a new credential with them that uses typical 3D printers, which are in a lot of schools and a lot of different programs. And they're able to be utilized to certify additive manufacturing kinds of skills. And that's probably another whole presentation in and of itself. So Heidi, do you want to talk about costs?
Sure. So that's one of our key questions. What's the estimated cost per student? And really pricing is determined by the assessment that's selected and the administration options that are selected. So that would be if you're going to administer with online testing, or if you're going to administer with paper pencil testing, or any other resources going to be incorporated, such as study guides. The NOCTI site coordinator has the ability to create a quote in the Client Services Center if that's needed as part of your school's purchasing process. And so we just wanted to show some sample pricing to give you an idea. And then there's additional information in the Client Services Center to help you really figure out what your cost quote would be. So this is an example of what the pricing is for job ready assessments. And you can see all of the different options for online or paper pencil administration, the pre-test that we mentioned, But let's say a single student is testing with online administration for a written test and the performance component, and that together would be $31 as an example. And then if we move on to pathway and employability assessments, really focusing on pathway, because there are some pathway assessments on the IBC list. So this slide shows pricing for pathway assessments. And again, you'll see the different configurations for pre-testing, post-testing. There is an option to order pre-post combos. And it's worth noting that pathway assessments are only available for online administration. There's not a paper pencil option for these. So pricing isn't quite as varied as what you saw on the previous slide for job readies. And then finally, we just wanted to show a slide quickly on some of the resources that we had talked about, particularly study guides and micro-credentials. Study guides are available in a paper pencil format, so you would actually receive books. And then the digital system that we mentioned is really the access for 24/7 through any device for teachers and students, and then obviously pricing for micro-credentials as well. So all that said, to ask, how can we get started? So once you're ready to get started and the school administrator designates who's going to be the individual to serve as the NOCTI site coordinator, there's a testing agreement on our website that's completed, basically letting us know who that site coordinator is, what is their contact information, who's the billing contact. It's all electronic. It's even e-signed. So once that form is completed and signed, it's automatically routed to NOCTI. We create an account for your school, and then we send a welcome email, and that really begins the onboarding process for new sites. So that onboarding and process includes the welcome email that I mentioned, but also multiple touch points for the first few weeks, just to provide information and guidance, links to helpful resources. So we really stay in touch as we're getting you onboarded to make sure that schools, and particularly the site coordinator, have everything that they need.
So Heidi, no matter what, the very first step is to go in there and fill out that form and designate a site coordinator, and that starts the ball rolling.
It does. And I would encourage you to really start that process as soon as possible, particularly we've been working with a lot of districts in Texas, and so that's been great to get some of this started. We're finding that in a lot of cases, we have to become an approved vendor for the school. There's some other things in play. I know there's some agreements, across regions and the buy board and all of those things, but we're filling out a fair amount of vendor paperwork. And so that takes a little bit of time too. So I would say the sooner you can get started getting the account set up and getting things going with onboarding, the better.
Is there any way for you guys to provide the information of which vendor list you're already on? Because I know if a school in your region is already on there, then they can piggyback off the school.
They can. And what we've been doing to handle that is we're asking that schools just reach out to us, and then we can check to see. We don't always know. So we're doing a lot of back and forth communication with the sites, and we're really happy to do that. And that's been working really well.
Awesome.
So I guess in closing, we really hope this information has been helpful. It was a lot. We know there's a lot to learn, but it really is easier than maybe it appeared with all of the information that we provided. And like I said, our customer care team is always available to answer questions. We're really happy to help. So just reach out to us anytime you need assistance.
That was very extensive. I can't believe y'all have all those resources available. It's incredible.
Well, thanks, Mark. I appreciate that. We really do. During the introduction, we didn't really talk about ourselves very much, but I've been in CT a long time, and I've seen what CT programs do for students, and really believe in it. I was a teacher, administrator, state director, and a bunch of other positions that don't need to be mentioned. But I've seen the good things that that these kind of programs do for kids. And Heidi, I know she could talk about her service on CT school boards and that sort of thing. So all of us have some direct connection with the community that we serve. So
You know, it's funny you said that because I think most of our people were CTE students first and CTE teachers. And now a lot of them are CTE administrators and counselors, and it really does make you a believer. And so when you guys come up and you provide, you know, I think the student packet was $42 for a set of, was that 6 or 10? For the student packet of
For an
Study guide.
the
assessment,
study guides.
oh, study guides.
Yeah.
Right, that's for a package of 10, or the digital is $4 per student. So they're really pretty inexpensive for the resource that they are.
It really is incredible. And do they do a good job of providing, making the student ready to take the exam, take the test, the certification?
I would say they do a really great job of guiding students through exploring what they need to do, you know, where they might need to learn more, ask more questions of their teacher. They're just a really great guide for helping move the student along and in their own kind of learning plan.
And also, is the teacher made the teacher go through the certification process, or is it for students only?
It's only students. Teachers aren't required to go through the certification for our NOCTI credentials.
But can they, if they wanted to?
Actually, the assessments on the IBC list are really targeted just for students.
You know, a lot of the teachers, let's say for pharmacy tech, if they're going to train the pharmacy tech students, they like to go through the certification process themselves. And so that's why I was asking. Some allow it, some don't. Anything else you guys are willing to share with the CTAC community?
No, just that we're really excited to start to dig in with you folks. You know, it's great opportunity, you know, to serve, you know, students in CT programs across the state of Texas. So we really are looking forward to it. And we appreciate you, Mark, putting this video together for, you know, for CTAT. And I know Heidi's already setting up individual video conferences with a couple different regions. So looks like things are rolling.
The schools that I have visited with that have used the NOCTI certification in the past, Carla Ruby at Denton, and Denton's a big school with a big CTE center up in North Texas. And she couldn't have bragged on you guys enough. You know, it's just all the schools are having really good experiences. And if they weren't, I probably wouldn't just say anything, you know, I'd probably just keep quiet, but they're having real positive experiences. And I'm looking forward to you guys being, you're stuck with us for at least 2 years, because that's how long you'll be on the list, and you'll get sunsetted 2 years after that. So we're stuck together for 4 years, and we appreciate having you guys.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you
You
very
bet.
much.
Thank you. Dr. Foster, Heidi Spees, and they're with the NOCTI, and they just, I just want to say one last thing. Make sure if you're watching this video, to go in there and fill out the form to make you or your designee a site coordinator, and that gets it going.
There's our contact information one more time.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. All right, stop recording.